Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I so appreciate that introduction. I am honored to be here as a trustee of the Aspen Institute and, for this occasion, most importantly, as Madeleine Albright's daughter. My mother loved the people of the Czech Republic, the beautiful city of Prague, and particularly her partnership with Aspen Central Europe. Through the years, my mother was always thrilled to speak at this convening to promote civil discourse and informed discussion. I do have prepared remarks because I'll be reading several of her remarks to you. She made these 8 years ago in November of 2016, a few days after America's election of Donald Trump as our 45th President of the United States, winning then against Secretary Hillary Clinton. My mother supported Secretary Clinton and shared with you her deep concerns at that time. After America's recent election, my mother's words remain poignant and meaningful, and for me, show a path forward to leaders' values-based leadership. So I thought it would be most meaningful to share them with you this morning. She began her remarks at that time stating, as has happened throughout American history, there will be a peaceful transfer of power from one party to another come January 20th. And while that thought is reassuring to those who believe in democracy, it leaves all of us to understand what it means for the United States, for Europe, and the world. Reflecting on the 2016 election, my mother noted several observations, including a loss of faith in institutions. She elaborated, stating, "What may ultimately be needed is a new social contract that addresses the unavoidable questions of the 21st century, questions we talked about here today, questions about personal identity and work in the age of globalization, information overload and high technology, about how people will be able to preserve their ethnic pride and value their national citizenship, and how nations will protect their sovereignty while cooperating regionally and globally with others." In her very plain speak, my mother acknowledged that there is no easy answers, but she argued that the only way to address these challenges is by reinforcing the values upon which democracy depends: the values of opportunity, responsibility, community, and respect for human dignity. She said, and now I quote her at length, "Democracy is a messy business that requires patience, hard work, flexibility, and the acceptance of its inherent imperfections. It is also asks us to live peacefully as neighbors with people who are different from us and we may not even like. And what most of us discover, and what I hope we will discover once again, is that we share more in common than we think, and that we are stronger as people if we overcome our superficial differences and unite around our shared interests and ideals. But to do that, democratic values must be shaped into our daily lives. The measure of a country's dedication to the values of opportunity, responsibility, community, and human dignity is how it resists the forces of darkness and intolerance. When we in the United States will have to show our true strengths over the coming year, and that strength comes from the fact that we are a country composed of people who trace their heritage to almost every other country, but who are bound together by the values of liberty and, yes, by an unyielding optimism about the future. For those of you who knew my mother, you may remember that 76 years ago this past Monday, on Armistice Day, my mother, my grandparents, my aunt, my uncle arrived in New York's harbor as refugees from the Czechoslovakia, which months earlier had been taken over by communists. Ever since that day and through to her death, she considered herself to be a grateful American. And no matter what, she was always proud to be. Based on this life story, which she knew the following to be true and shared with you: in November 2016. I quote again, "For the truth is that populism and nationalism are not unique to America or Central Europe, nor is the skepticism of national and global institutions. But while those currents run through our political system today, they are not the values on which our transatlantic alliance stands. Instead, our alliance is grounded in a fundamental optimism about the ability of human beings to make progress in freedom. It is based on a firm belief in worth noting of every individual, and it is embodied in liberal democracy, the only road we can all walk down together." My mother said nearly 100 years ago, President Thomas Masaryk crossed the Atlantic in search of friends for his country's cause. He did not appeal to America's geopolitical self-interest. He did not offer to sell the United States oil or offer us access to some vast new market. He did not promise us a secret alliance against other major powers. No, Thomas Masaryk had a deeper understanding of national interest than that. He appealed to the U.S. on the basis of a profound connection between Czechoslovak and American ideals. He believed that a nation's success depends on its purpose, and that America's purpose and that of the Czech and Slovak people are the same, and that our shared purpose is freedom. No one knows better than you in this room that freedom has and will always have enemies. Evil has found many masks, from Nazis to communists, from practitioners of ethnic cleansing to apostles of fear and hate. Over time, the labels and the battlegrounds have changed. What we must never change is our determination to stand together, to defend liberty and seek truth, and to preserve in our efforts to build a better and freer life in our own countries and for all people. Finally, as my mother shared, no one in modern public life understood this as well as President Václav Havel. And so she closed her comments in 2016 by quoting him. His quote reads, "We are not accountable solely to our party, our voters, our lobbies, and our states, but in fact to the entire human race, including those who come after us, and that the decision on the worth of our deeds will ultimately be made beyond the realm of mortals around us." In the language of today's world, this means nothing more than to hearken in our various dilemmas to the voice that speaks to us from the depths of our own conscience. That voice is still free to speak, my mother said in closing, and we should let it speak to the values and ideals that brought us to this point, and that should guide us now and to the future that awaits. Thank you so much.
Katie Albright.